Ooh, I got a good one for you. This book is a classic. You got the camera steady, Director?
Yeah, sorry.
This one is a classic. It's been around for quite a while, and it has sold millions of copies for the last 30 years or more. And it's called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And this was written by Judi and Ron Barrett. Do you notice they both have the same last name? That means they're either married or they were family in some way. I may have to look up at these people. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. We were all sitting round the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning. Pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we each could eat. And Grandpa was doing the flipping. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake... Oh, excuse me, I missed something. Sorry. Seconds later, something flew through the air, heading right toward the kitchen ceiling, and landed on Henry. Ha! After we realized that this flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he'd ever told. Well, what is a tall tale? That would mean a largely fictional, made up, very exaggerated story. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, and 300 people. That's a small town. And some assorted cats and dogs. But there was no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. No grocery stores. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food they could possibly want. Imagine that. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. Whatever the weather served, that's what they ate. But it never rained rain. It never snowed snow. And it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice. It snowed mashed potatoes and green peas, and sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. The people would watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction for the next day's food. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way, they'd always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there was leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in their refrigerators in case they got hungry between meals. The menu would vary. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny-side-up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast, and most of the time it rained milk afterwards. For lunch one day, frankfurters, that's like hot dogs, already in their rolls, blew in from the northwest, and about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby. Then the wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. I can imagine getting kind of sticky and after a while, right? Who does the cleanup? Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by gradual clearing with a wonderful jello setting in the west. Oh my gosh, there's a giant jello. The sanitation department, oh, here we go. Somebody's going to explain the mess. The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. Sanitation means the people who come and clean. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all the dogs and cats. Aha! There you go. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and turtles and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. Ah, compost. Hoo-hoo. Life for the townspeople was delicious under the weather until it took a turn for the worse. Dun dun dun! One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day. The next day there was only broccoli. Overcooked broccoli. Mushy. And the next day there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. Another day there was pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that they was stuck in the fog. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread rolls and butter. There were soft rolls and hard rolls. Oh my God, there was white bread and rye bread, and most was larger than anybody had ever seen before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department, that's the cleanup crew, was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds picked at it a bit, but it stayed there and got staler and dry and hard and bleh. Then there was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup that neatly flooded the town. Excuse me, not neatly, nearly. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight. Nobody could get it off. And so they had to close the school due to pancake. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drifts of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomachache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There were seeds and pulp everywhere. The sanitation department gave up. This job is too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. That means to leave it. It was a matter of survival. The people glued together a giant sandwich of stale bread with peanut butter, and they took the absolute necessities with them and set sail on their rafts for a new land. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. The children who began school again and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in this new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that the food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except for rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again. And nobody dared go to Chew and Swallow to find out what happened to it. They're way too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story. I remember his good night kiss. Next morning we woke up to see snow falling outside our window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate a little faster than usual so that we could go sledding with Grandpa. It's funny, but even as we were sledding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter at the top, and we could almost smell mashed potatoes. The end. What an unusual book, right? I hope you enjoyed it. Please come back for more. Bye-bye, everybody.